Can you hear me okay? Great. Hi and welcome. My name is Liz Wessel, and I am the co-founder and CEO of WayUp, a platform that enables college students and recent grads to discover and be discovered by the best employers in the country. Since we launched the company 3 years ago, we've had college students using us to pay tuition, we've had recent grads using us to launch their careers, but millions of people have been using WayUp to really find meaning in what they want to do for their career. And tonight, I couldn't be more excited about the event that you're all here for. So this is called WayUp Office Hours. It's actually our 15th one. And the topic is diversity in finance. And so I'm going to welcome in 1 second the panelists onto the stage. I'll ask them some questions, and then I'm going to open it up to you guys. If you want to post about the event, it's hashtag WayUp Office Hours. But again, thank you guys so much for coming, and please join me in welcoming Peter Boyce, Chris Ogleby, and Kellen Carter. So this is Peter Boyce, and you guys can just come on out. So I'm pretty casual about how I do bios, and so usually I would just give you like the one sentence, here's what this person does, but each of these three guys are so impressive, it's insane. And so I was hoping you guys could actually just give how you give your spiel in 60 seconds or so. So I'd love to hear what you do right now and then how you kind of got here in 60 seconds or so, and then we're going to do some deep dives.
Cool.
Why don't you kick it off?
Sure. Hey everyone, my name is Peter Boyce. I'm an investor at General Catalyst. We're a $4 billion venture capital firm with offices in Boston, Palo Alto, San Francisco, and then I helped open our New York office with another investor. I started in venture capital when I was in school. So my senior year, I started a fund called Rough Draft Ventures to invest in student entrepreneurs. So I was really passionate about helping my friends start companies, and I didn't have the grades to do other things. So I kind of had to create my own fund and my own pathway. And I was really lucky to work at startups here in New York when I was in school. So I worked at a startup called Skillshare, and I worked on some startups of my own. So that's me.
Hi everyone, Chris Ogleby. I'm an associate in investment banking at Citigroup. I've been there for about a little bit over 2 years now. I have a little bit of a non-traditional background. Prior to that, I was a practicing lawyer here in the city. I was an M&A attorney, mergers and acquisitions. Went to law school at NYU. Prior to that, worked a couple years in finance and asset management. We can get into what that is later. And prior to that, I went to Princeton, graduated with a degree in economics in 2008.
Hi everyone, I'm Kellen Carter. I started my career at the SEC. I was an attorney and an examiner. Right now I am the general counsel and the chief compliance officer of a startup registered investment advisor. I am from Philadelphia. I went to Vanderbilt. I went to Howard for law school. I live on the Upper East Side.
Awesome.
I don't know what
so
else
clearly I'm on a stage with underachievers, right? No, but these guys are incredible, so thank you for joining. Why don't we just go in order down the panel? So I'm going to ask each of them a few questions so you guys can better understand what each of them do, and then I'm going to open it up to a few questions that apply for maybe all three of you. So why don't we start with you, Peter? So you're a venture capitalist, and I always love asking venture capitalists this. So are you basically Mark Cuban on Shark Tank? Is that who you are, what you do?
Trying to be. Definitely trying to be.
What's the difference between, if they can all understand what does a venture capitalist do, like what's the difference between Shark Tank and what you do?
Yeah, totally. So first off, we are incredibly lucky to be investors in WayUp, and so it's been a total privilege to get to know Liz and support her company. So a typical kind of day in the life, definitely for us is, we're always hearing pitches and presentations from entrepreneurs that are thinking about fundraising, thinking about ways to kind of scale and grow their companies, and looking for capital, looking for investors to support them, and also just looking for kind of like feedback on their idea and what they should kind of iterate on. And so most of our day is listening to these presentations, either going and visiting companies, like that's where I was just now, I was visiting a company in Tribeca, or having companies come by our office and kind of sharing the narrative. So why did they start the company, who's on their team, what's the product they're building, why is it an interesting market, and then how they're thinking about growing and scaling their company. And so every once in a while we do get in kind of like the heated debates when we're making investment decisions. And so that dynamic of kind of like competitive and like sharing feedback that ends up happening on Shark Tank is very much shared with our experience. I will tell you that we typically don't do any deals where there's a royalty. So that is an aspect of Shark Tank that I've never seen in practice. We're lucky to be investors in Warby Parker. We do not get a royalty from every pair of glasses that's sold.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, trust me, I wish we'd structured that. So that's kind of a day in our life.
So how many companies pitch to you, whether it's General Catalyst or you, Peter, every year?
I was going to give you an example of yesterday. So I met 16 companies yesterday, which is like a world record for me, and I don't think I'll ever repeat that. But I think on any given year, we'll probably see 500 to 1,000 companies.
And how many investments will you make a year?
Probably about 6 to 8. Oof. Yeah, so it's tough.
Rough odds.
It's a lot of no's, which is a bummer.
So I'm curious, I think a lot of people watch Shark Tank, or they see these really cool startups, or they watch, the Facebook movie, and they say, I want to be a venture capitalist. It seems so cushy and nice and cool, and you get to choose who gets money. Is it as like sexy, cool, and dreamy as people think it is?
Yeah, it's pretty good. So very, very lucky. No, there are plenty of downsides to this. The having to say no, basically an infinite number of times is very challenging. Especially you're going to meet entrepreneurs that are your friends or folks that you really, really come to respect, and you've got to tell them that it's not a fit. Number two is we do a tremendous amount of work as well. So it's there's so much that goes beyond past the first meeting and the second meeting, diligence and research, and again kind of competing to win a deal, and then finding ways to support that company beyond the capital. And so there's definitely kind of a tip of the iceberg, which is the first pitch presentation, and then there's all this other stuff that gets done. But I will say that it is totally a privilege and a pleasure to work in venture capital, especially given the world of software we live in today.
Now you went into venture capital in a very non-ordinary path. You started a venture capital fund your senior year of college, was it? Can you explain how you did that? And for how many people, raise your hand if you're in college right now? All right, so 90%. So raise your hand if you want to start your own VC fund in college.
Yeah.
Okay, 3 people. Yeah, be proud, raise your hand. So 3 or 4 people. And I'm just curious, how does one start their own venture capital fund?
Yeah, the short version of this is, I think, to the extent that you can exhibit the behavior that VCs do in their day-to-day while you're a student, I think this is hugely valuable. So do things like put co-founders together and kind of help them. Host events on your campus that bring VCs and mentors back to share time and to help support the founder ecosystem on your campus. I think if you can develop a reputation of helping entrepreneurs and empathizing with them, you can get a lot of support from the broader venture capital community, and that's a way of standing out. Because I think our world, and this is why I'm so in awe of the stunning careers of the folks next to me. It is for the way that we recruit and the way that we think about building out our teams in venture capital is so much about relationships and trust. And so I think to the extent that you can kind of think of ways to support founders and build relationships with VCs when you're in college, I think this is a great starting point.
And my last question, and then we're going to turn to you, Chris. What skills should those in the audience who would ever be interested in eventually going into VC, what skills should they be trying to acquire right now? How should they be preparing?
Yeah, totally. So this is one that is interesting. So some of the best venture folks in the world have legal backgrounds, and I pay a lot of attention to that because it means that you understand negotiation, transactions. You're hyper responsive, and a lot of those are really good characteristics, many of which I do not have. And so I've had to think about different skills. I think increasingly today folks have engineering and product backgrounds, so being able to understand product feedback and the way software is built and what tools folks need to build companies, I think is a really interesting skill set, and I think positions folks to be in the kind of the seat of a venture capitalist. Two is, folks that are amazing at communications and journalism also have a lot of the skills that translate really nicely into venture capital. So you can identify people that are part of an interesting emerging trend. You can chase them down. You can write narratives and be super persuasive. And so that's really, really crucial. If you want to be in venture where you have to motivate investments. And then I think the third is, thinking about either your own kind of entrepreneurial path and thinking about either joining a startup or working on an idea yourself. A lot of folks in venture, came at it from being an operator from within a startup that they worked at or started. So that's another important pathway. But the beauty of it is today, there's never been more kind of diversity in terms of the pathways into venture. Whereas before, you needed to have a banking background, you needed to have a consulting background, and you also were virtually only guaranteed a 1 or 2 year analyst position. So that's changed a lot.
Awesome. All right, Chris, I'm on you now. So you're an investment banker.
I am, yes.
And there's probably no profession I can think of that has more different types of stereotypes about it than investment banking.
There are a lot, yeah.
And I'm just curious, what do investment bankers actually do?
Right.
And then I want to understand, what are your peers like? Are they actually, working 6 a.m. until 2 a.m. every day and all of that? So why don't we start with, what does an investment banker do?
Okay, so 30,000 feet level. So investment banks or investment bankers rather, are advisors to companies and boards of directors and management teams in the decisions that they have to make. They have to make a lot of strategic decisions about where to take their company especially in mature industries after Peter's invested in them and they've grown to be hugely successful companies like Amazon. Amazon's CEO Jeff Bezos has to make important decisions, and kind of who does he turn to help him kind of come to the best decision? He turns to investment bankers. And investment bankers are experts in specific fields. They know industries, they know what's going on, and they can tell Jeff, look, Jeff, it makes sense for you to raise capital to do this new project that you're thinking about doing, or to buy this new company that's kind of in your field, and you should do that for X, Y, and Z reasons. So it's about concierge advice to companies, CEOs, boards of directors.
All right. And so tell me about a day in the life of an investment banker, or just you in general.
Just me in general. I'm going to give you the stock answer. It varies.
Okay. So today.
Yeah, today. So it hasn't been that bad. It hasn't been that bad. So
it's going to be interesting if it starts with, it's not that bad.
No, so get in normal time, 9:30, 9:45, and it's kind of filled with, it kind of depends on what's on your plate. So for me, my managing directors, who are kind of the senior folks in the organization, they have a number of meetings lined up, and to kind of speak with clients, and kind of to my earlier point, speak with CEOs and boards of directors to kind of give them ideas of how to grow value for their shareholders. So preparing for a lot of meetings like that, and what that means is each meeting is a tailor-made process where you kind of look at the company and kind of work with your team to kind of see what makes sense in the context of that company, and should they acquire someone, should they raise capital, and you have to do then kind of, and this is where all the hard work comes in, the financial analysis to kind of unpack all those concepts, and to make sure that the story is told properly on the pages, so that when your managing director or the team goes in front of the CEO, he or she is well prepared, right. Can give actually good advice, can answer hard questions, because investment bankers are paid a lot of money by companies, and CEOs expect perfect service, so you got to prepare them, and that's where all of the legwork and the hard work comes in.
Awesome. So I'm curious as to, Citi, when I think about Citi, I think, you talked about how you had a law background.
Yep.
And I think of Citi as one of the most diverse of the investment banks. And I'm not even just talking about ethnic or gender diversity, but also of backgrounds. And the fact that you're an investment banker and former lawyer is so relevant to that.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to how you think about diversity at Citi, and let alone just in the investment banking space in general, and how it's changed over the 2 years even that you've been there, as well as the focus. It seems like it's become a much more of a conversation.
Yeah, it's definitely more of a focus, especially in this day and age. Citi specifically is a very global organization. It is one of the most, if not the most, global of the investment banks and its peers. So with that comes advantages. I have colleagues across the globe in different time zones, and kind of to the earlier point about the hours, having global capabilities leads to kind of working across time zones. So you got to have to accommodate different time schedules, so which kind of extend your hours. But working with my colleagues across the globe and kind of understanding where they come from, and also like to understand further the clients that they serve, because each country and each client, it's a combination of the people that work there, and people come from all around the world. So it kind of leveraging that kind of helps.
And one final question for you. You work in the chemical sector, is that
I do,
correct?
yeah.
So what does that mean, and how did you choose chemicals, or was that chosen for you?
Yeah, all right. So I work in chemicals investment banking, which is inside at Citi, at least, the industrials franchise. And chemicals is an interesting space because it's a space that touches everything, but no one really thinks about or knows anything about. Everything from the smell of your fragrance, or to the mouthfeel of your food. Like, all that's kind of influenced by chemicals made by these companies all over the world, and so it's interesting from that standpoint, because it's incredibly important, and it's kind of behind the scenes, and it's also intellectually rigorous in the sense of so. A confession, the last chemistry class I took was in high school, so I took AP chemistry, so I haven't taken a chemistry class since, so it provides a good learning curve, and I think maybe one of the things we'll kind of tease out in this session, in a profession that you seek, you want to kind of seek out that learning curve, like where's the opportunity to grow, and to kind of like stretch yourself, and to learn new concepts, and to kind of connect things to other experiences that you've had. So for me, it kind of provides that.
Awesome. All right, on to you, and then we're going to open up a few questions for all three of you guys. You ready?
I guess.
Okay.
We'll see how this goes.
So, I guarantee that maybe 95% of this room heard that you're a chief compliance officer and said, "What?" So, what? What is that?
Yes. So I am the general counsel and chief compliance officer of a startup registered investment advisor. So you guys have heard of Fidelity, Vanguard. They're all registered investment advisors. You have to register or have an exemption with the SEC. You guys know about the SEC, not the football league, the actual
What is the SEC for people who don't know?
So the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, is the federal regulatory agency that has the duty to regulate the financial markets, investment advisors, essentially the police of Wall Street. They gave me a badge, and I thought they wanted me to use it for Halloween, but apparently it is true. So a compliance officer, so all registered investment advisors have to have chief compliance officers. And essentially, the chief compliance officer, myself, is responsible for, to the best of their ability, ensuring that they're compliant with the law. So we have, there's, after the 1930 stock market crash, they were like, oh, we should regulate these money managers. They came out with these acts, the 33, 34 acts. Then they came out with the investment advisor 40 acts. And so essentially, for a registered investment advisor, I have to make sure that they are compliant with the 40 acts. So you have your advisor, which is ARC. That's my company, ARK, Investment Management. And we have funds. We have exchange-traded funds. We have some mutual funds. We have some separately managed accounts, and those are the registered investment companies that we have to advise. And so we essentially have to make sure that we're compliant with the federal securities laws.
Awesome. So considering that you have a legal background, lawyers can be lawyers in any industry, right? I mean, literally every company that gets big enough has to have a lawyer. So why did you choose finance to be a lawyer in?
Better question might be why I chose law, and then
let's hear that first, and then why finance?
I'll get to that. Well, so I kind of wanted to save the world when I got out of college. Like, I had this huge pie in the sky dream. I wanted to fight international law or crime or whatever, and never really. Anyone who wants to go to law school, you need to work at a law firm and really talk to a lawyer and understand what it takes to be a lawyer, which is what I didn't do. I kind of just followed my friends. I graduated from college, didn't know what I wanted to do. I lived in Paraguay for a year. I did taught English or something, and then I was like, oh, all my friends are taking the LSAT. Maybe I should take the LSAT. So I did that, and then I went to law school. And then so when I was in law school, I went to Howard Law School in DC, and then I was there from 2007 to 2010. And so that was right in the middle of the financial crisis. And so I was just like, fuck, maybe, excuse my language, maybe I should learn about this securities law. Like, you know, the sky is falling. I should probably learn about this stuff, right? So then I started taking all these securities law classes, and securities are equities, bonds, stocks, they're securities in the law. And so, I was like, I should learn about this. So I was like, the best place to learn about it is the Securities and Exchange Commission. Oh, well, maybe I'll try to get an internship there. It was pretty much the financial crisis sparked my interest. And then coming out of law school, 2010, there weren't any jobs. And so, thankfully, I hustled and knocked on every door and was able to land a job at the SEC, which has basically been the foundation for my career. And it was just a great time to be there, post Madoff, post mortgage-backed securities, and a great time to learn. So.
And what was the culture like at the SEC?
The culture was like one of the best cultures of my life. It's very, you're working with some very smart people, but I'll keep it real. It's really hard to get fired from the government. So like after your first year, it's very difficult to get fired. So you really have some people who are lifers who just never leave. They work, they have like these 5-4-9s where you can like have different days off. It's very like a very comfortable life. Like you pretty much set the standards to which people have to apply. Like you can be like, oh yeah, you can have that to me tomorrow or next week. So it's fun being the regulator. It's more fun to be the regulator because people have to operate off your time. And so now I'm being on the private side, I'm like, I hate the regulator because it's just like I have to now answer to them.
Yeah. So now I understand when people say that the SEC or the government's so slow. It's because
Yeah, that's actually a real problem at the government in terms of having an efficient government, is that it's become, if you can't fire people, then what's the incentive for them to do well? And really the only way, and I don't work for the SEC anymore, so the only way to get fired is really for time and attendance. And so,
or fraud or something like that. The obvious illegal stuff.
But really time and attendance is the, not showing up. You might, you might get someone knocking on your door. But so I just feel like it's really difficult to create an efficient government, and that's why things take so long, because like you have these guys who've been in bureaucracy for a long time and just stuck in their ways, and really don't have an incentive to.
Awesome. All right, so we got 15 minutes. I'm going to open it up to you guys, and then we're going to have, I think, 20 or 30 minutes for your questions, I'm sure, which are much better than mine. But my question for each of you is, what was the biggest myth about finance, maybe even more specifically your type of role in finance, that when you joined you kind of said, oh, that's not true, or that's not as true?
I can start.
I try to ask hard questions.
Yeah, that was tough. Look, I think one of the things that I think a lot of folks told me was that it's not a good idea to spend time with other folks in venture. That's like a piece of advice that I think a lot of folks get. Just focus on companies, focus on sourcing, just steals. And I would just I was like, I don't think that's the right strategy. And I think that enabled me to think about my time and my relationships in a way that's really different. And I'm really glad I made that decision 4.5 years ago, because now I've cultivated deep friendships and relationships with folks that I co-invest with, that I compete with, that I share notes with, that are other folks that I think are going to grow up in the venture capital industry. And so that was one myth that I was kind of like, time out, and I'm kind of glad I did.
Regarding banking specifically, and this was kind of, I had this fear even myself when I was thinking about moving into the industry, but it has a reputation for being kind of rough around the edges, a lot of sharp personalities, elbows, just long, grueling hours, impossible, and all these things. I think the industry has changed significantly in the past, call it even 5 years. At my firm specifically, they put in a lot of time and effort for programs to kind of adapt to, my generation and our generation's kind of way of looking at work life, kind of what they want to get out of their opportunity at Citi, investment banking specifically. So they put in a lot of policies to kind of guard against a lot of the things that made the industry rough in the past. So I think the surprising upside for me, specifically given that I had a non-traditional background, I was a lawyer beforehand, I never actually interned or worked at a bank previously, is that it's a supportive environment. They care about you getting an enriching experience. They care about you having a semblance of a life. There are policies, like actual policies in place to ensure that you have protected time to kind of tend to yourself, tend to your hobbies, hang out with family. So the industry's changed significantly in the most recent time. So I would say that that's something.
Awesome.
I would say one of the things that you may not necessarily make money in finance too. I think a lot of people go into finance that want to make all this money, and you may not. So that's one of the stereotypes that I've recognized.
And why not?
Well, just the role you may play in finance. You may be more on the. I don't think for example. I don't know how much money I've made in finance. I'm still waiting. So I'll answer that question when I find out. But I don't know. I just think that certain roles that you play, certain positions that you have in the company, or where you're working, the company that you're working for in finance, it just may not be one of the top dogs that brings down a lot of money. So.
I would say kind of a macro point to kind of tack onto that is, you guys are kind of starting your careers, and money is important. You got to live, you got to support yourself, you got to support your families. But when you're choosing a career, money necessarily, and this is my only belief, maybe you guys can disagree, but money shouldn't be the biggest driver behind things. To do these jobs, especially hard jobs, you need to have the energy. You need to be able to invest your time, all of yourself into these jobs, and it requires a lot out of you. And if your only motivating factor is money, it can only take you so far. You got to have a natural curiosity about it, and want to see yourself grow in the industry.
One of the best pieces of advice I remember at my graduation from college, was from one of my friend's dads, and he said, you all should really choose your career in the same way that you might think about choosing your spouse or your significant other, because you're going to spend more time with your job than you are with your spouse for most of your life. And I thought that was really powerful. Yeah, so you don't want to be like a gold digger in your personal relationship, so don't be a gold digger in your job relationship, right?
Exactly.
There you go. Awesome. All right, so I want to hear about how you got into your role. So it's Vanderbilt, Princeton, Harvard undergrad, right?
Yes.
So let's start with in college. What classes did you take that actually helped you in your finance roles, if any?
Yeah. I'll start out. Yeah, so I went to Princeton, and banking is something that I heard about when I was on campus, but not something that obviously I immediately went into or invested a lot of time in. But I was an economics major, and I think the first step kind of in testing the thesis of whether or not you want to go into finance is to kind of focus on finance classes, taking classes with professors in subject areas in the finance realm, and kind of kicking those tires. So I went to a liberal arts college, liberal arts education and curriculum, and I think the challenge for me particularly was kind of finding quote-unquote practical classes that kind of spoke to the nitty-gritty day-to-day, what you'd actually be doing versus the high-level theory. So to the extent that you can seek those classes out, or even extracurricularly seek those resources out online, there's a plethora of information on the internet about finance and services. So curricularly, you can find these things to kind of hone the hard skills.
I think a course that Vanderbilt offers is called Human organizational development, which is kind of based in like, you think about like how people interact in groups and work together and the psychology behind organizations and the people who run those organizations, and also understanding like how you think as a person and how you learn. So I think those kind of people skills and getting to understand like, you know, how do you engage with people? Are you like those Myers-Briggs tests? I think those were really helpful for me personally, because once you can understand.
I think a lot of people probably don't know what Myers-Briggs is. If you wouldn't mind.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
It's like one of those tests that teaches you about your personality traits and professional settings, etc. Like, you know, are you you work well in groups, or do you more do your own thing, or, you know, how do you learn? So I think the faster you can like learn how you learn, how you process things, how you perceive things, and then also your people awareness skills about like how to work in groups and how to manage people, how to manage up, how to manage down, how to manage across. I think that's really important. The faster you learn that, the more you can then use that as a tool to like, I don't want to say manipulate in a bad way, but to like, you know, use something to the best of your ability to make things work for you in any organization, and also work with people so that you can get the maximum out of whatever output you're trying to achieve.
I would kind of piggyback on that and say this is a panel about finance. There's a diversity within finance in terms of like what you can do, and there's a role no matter what the outcome of this assessment would be. If you're more introverted, there are roles, there are quant roles. If you're more quantitative, if you're more if you're people oriented, there's roles for that. If you kind of want to be on the tech startup side, there's roles for that. So there's something kind of for everyone, and there's a lot of diversity within finance. It's not just a monolith, like, oh, you have to be this one type of person to be successful in the industry.
Yeah, I'll just say this super fast. I studied applied math and computer science. The classes that stood out to me were the class I took around behavioral economics. I think that helped me understand the most around product design, the way people make decisions around buying things online and where they choose to allocate their time and things like that. So whenever I'm in a meeting, I'm typically kind of drawing insights from folks like Dan Ariely and others. And then I think the second piece is I chose a bunch of classes based on the professors and like the legendary nature or kind of, you know, mentorship history of those professors, and converting those into kind of, you know, potentially like lifelong mentors was a key part of the way I chose classes. And so that was super helpful to me, because I wasn't thinking necessarily about the, you know, doing well in the class on a weekly basis. I was thinking about, you know, this professor could offer, you know, like a whole wealth of like information and mentorship. And so if I can, you know, use the class to kind of form a relationship with them, to take that opportunity.
That is so important. I think that's always guided my career. Even now, I have like mentors, and I'm like very quick to call someone my mentor just to establish that relationship, so they know that they have a duty to me to help me in my career. And actually, someone said that they like the word career champion better. I don't care what semantics you use. However, you need to gather these mentors and like build real relationships with them, because everyone can spot someone who's fake and only trying to use them, an opportunist. So like build real relationships, but you have to nourish those relationships, but it'll guide you throughout.
Yeah. So I'd love to talk about how you got into your companies or industries, because I was talking to a bunch of people beforehand, and every one of them had, you know, or most of them had mentioned to me they don't know anyone in finance. And a lot, you know, if you look at the people who are walking in and out of your offices and buildings, most of them happen to be white men. And, you know, we all know that just like how if a company's all women, you're going to get more referrals that are women, and if a company's more white men, you're going to get more referrals that are white men, et cetera. For me, I remember when I wanted to go into finance one summer, I had no connections. I didn't know the first thing about it. I just cold emailed so many people, and one responded and offered me an internship, and it was so cool. Yeah. I'm curious, is that how you got, you know, you mentioned that you just hustled and reached out to somebody, like how did you guys get into your companies?
Well, I came on 2010 again. The market, there was no job market, and so I was scared, you know, coming out of law school. You really have to hustle, and so I actually latched on. One of my mentors today, he's like a legend in the industry, in the investment management industry. Old white man, dry white man, boring as fuck, but he's been my mentor and like guided me throughout my career thus far. And it's just really, it took me the initiative I knew someone of his credentials had to have something up his sleeve. That something was the SEC, But I had to go that extra mile, which meant going to his office after class and say, look, Barry, like, what's up? Like, I know you got something, like, I'm about to graduate, what's good? And so finally, something fell through. So it's just really leveraging, getting outside of your comfort zone to make that relationship. And he's literally guided my career thus far.
But there's no way you were the only one who went to his office after class. There were probably so many. So what did you do to stand out?
I went to his office too after class. So
Yeah.
it wasn't just like I kind of was, though. I really was.
You
And
just like stalked him.
yeah, pretty much. I mean, it was actually me and a friend. I felt so bad because me and a friend who were both looking for jobs, but he didn't go to his office and meet up with him. And you have to keep going. Like, the first time, I really didn't have anything. The second time, you really didn't have anything. And then finally, he was like, oh, yeah, my friend just got a job at this SEC, and they're looking for examiners. I think you might be interested. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm definitely interested in that. So I think it's just that hustle. You really have to have that hustle. Even in a down market, you can make it happen, but you have to believe, and you have to work twice as hard as the next person.
Yeah, I would say that with respect to investment banking, if you rewind 30 years ago, it was definitely a different type of atmosphere. It was more clubby. It's kind of, you had to know someone, you had to know exactly what it was, and it was like they had a set feeder schools. You had to go to have a certain type of pedigree to get into the industry, et cetera. I think the advantage of being in our current day and age is, technology has been kind of the leveler of the playing field, so to speak. So like there are resources that kind of are all over the internet. There are books that you can buy. There are things that you can kind of do within your own agency, within your own power, to kind of set yourself up and to level the playing field between the next person. With that being said, it's a double-edged sword. So everyone knows that all this information is available, and therefore the expectation is higher that, applicants and candidates that come before to kind of like interview for analyst spots or associate spots, they expect them to be on their A game, and it kind of goes back to the point of you got to hustle. You got to put in the work, you got to put in the time, you got to put in the hours, and show that commitment to, wanting to better yourself and wanting to enter this industry with your best foot forward.
Really quick, so one of my first jobs was working at Bad Boy Entertainment when I was in school, and I was literally at an event like this, and I basically chased this person down because I was like, I grew up listening to hip hop, and I was like, I've got to meet this person. I literally went and met them at their office, and kind of converted that into one of my first jobs. So definitely kind of double clicking on the hustle. I think the second thing is work on side projects with people. You know what I mean? Like I interview virtually anyone and everyone that works on a small side project with me or someone on my team. And I think that is one strategy that is so underplayed by students. One of my first mentors in venture capital, I literally just created a spreadsheet of interesting companies and shared it. They didn't ask for it. I was just like, here's the interesting New York startups I think are cool. And he like went through this. I was like, half of these are garbage. You don't even know what you're talking about. But it gave me like the opportunity to have a second conversation and then a third conversation, and then turn into my career champion. You know what I mean? Like that person is one of the best investors in the world, and someone that I attribute a lot of my career to. So yeah, side projects. You know what I mean? Like you've got 5 hours on a weekend to crank on something valuable to someone else, and I think that really opens the door.
That's so smart. Awesome. Okay, last question, and it's one of those like yes or no, and then we're going to open it up to you guys. And for everyone who's on Facebook Live, you can comment with questions, and we would love to answer them as well. So MBAs, they used to be so important. Are they still so, as I fall off my chair, are they still so important for specifically your industry?
Unnecessary.
Growingly, no.
Bullshit degree.
I love it. So these guys just saved you like $100,000+. You're welcome. Awesome. All right, I'd love to hear questions from you guys, and if you guys could just remind me how much time we have left for questions. We've got 25 minutes. All right, so anyone who has questions, if you could just raise your hand, and Michael will come around with the microphone, so please don't be shy.
All right, and we'll kick it off with a Facebook Live question, and we'll bring you the next mic.
Awesome, you're up.
So for Bad Boy Boys, Bad Boy Boys.
Yeah, come on.
How do you see equity crowdfunding impacting venture capital?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it helps.
Can you also explain what it
Yeah, I
is?
was about to say, yeah, I'll unpack this. So this is kind of like the advent of platforms online that are enabling entrepreneurs to raise capital from a broad set of kind of community fans. So think companies like Kickstarter and GoFundMe and others, where if you have an idea and you can throw up a few videos and a description and kind of a game plan, you can get folks from anywhere in the world contributing $10, $50, $100, and in aggregate, all of a sudden you can have $250,000, $2 million, $40 million to start a consumer brand, create a game, create a movie, create a music video, whatever. And so that's kind of crowdfunding. We've definitely seen it kind of, help a lot of entrepreneurs get up and off the ground with their kind of first version of their product. So, if you're making a hardware company and you need to create a robotic prototype, not everyone has $100,000 to do that. And so equity crowdfunding is definitely democratizing access. So if you have a really phenomenal idea and are super authentic and dedicated to it, all of a sudden you can get the resource to get off the ground. So I see it as complementing us and helping us see more interesting ideas at earlier stages that may have not existed otherwise.
Hi, this is for Peter. What do you look into startups? What are the formulas or strategies you decide to pick a winner or not?
Yeah. That's a good one. So I think at its most basic level, so the core of our work is we end up writing investment memos for every investment that we do. It's kind of like couple page document. A few of the critical things that we look for just at a top level is number one is the founders and the founding team. So do they have either a background in the space? Are they authentically passionate about it? Do they have an ability to recruit and kind of pull people together to work with them? Do they have a unique insight about the market or about the product space that makes it so that they're going to have an unfair advantage? So we spend a lot of time looking at that. The second is we do a quick kind of gut check on the market size or what the market potential is. And so if it's super, super finite, it's really tough to imagine what the venture capital kind of return is. So to give you a sense, when we typically invest, call it, $10 million in a company, and our hope is that we get $200 million back. You can't do that if, you're selling, gloves to, people in this city, you know what I mean? It's just like of this color, you know what I mean? It's got to be like a huge market opportunity. And so that's a big piece. The third is, the product. Is it a compelling product? Do they have designers and engineers that can help build and iterate on software? Is really important. And I'd say the last is really understanding their product vision. So can they clearly articulate and define, what the future looks like in 5, 10, or 15 years if what they do is successful? And so really assessing if they can kind of think about their idea as first principles rather than being derivative. So rather than saying, we're going to build the Lyft for Y, you know what I mean, or the Airbnb for Z, can they really kind of distill why the world is going to, look different and why, a company needs to exist today to cater to that future world?
Cool. Thanks for the question. My question's for Chris.
Yes.
So I heard you mention that prior to working in law, you worked in asset management for a brief period of time.
Yes.
A lot of people go to banking strictly to get to the buy side, which is working at the biggest asset managers, hedge funds, private equity funds. So what made you go the opposite way?
So yeah, it's interesting. So I specifically work for MetLife. It's a big insurer, and they have a big portfolio of insurance premiums that they have, and they invested in different asset classes. So it's slightly nuanced from, and to your point, asset management is a broad asset class. So it's slightly nuanced from private equity specifically, or venture capital, or different other types of asset management. But I focused on real estate. I was in the real estate portfolio unit, and it was interesting specifically because had I done it over again, and this is my own personal belief, I would have started in investment banking right out of undergrad. So I kind of to your point, started at the end. And it's a place where people who've kind of gained a lot of experience, they have a name in the industry, and they kind of go to continue their careers, but at a much slower pace. They're not at the beginning arc of their career where they're facing the steep learning curve, working extremely hard. They're kind of towards the latter end where they put in their work and they paid their dues. So starting out, that wasn't necessarily the best environment for me. So that's kind of my point.
Awesome. Got a bunch in the front. Oh, you're next.
Yeah. So this question basically for all three of you, and it's a little bit broader. It's basically on your mentors. So what's the most important lesson that your mentors have taught you? I know that's a little bit hard to answer, but what's the key thing that this is the thing that really taught you and have driven your goals in all your lives?
You got to ask for what you want. It's you know what you want in your head. You got to obviously put the work behind it, but feel free to reach out to people. People are a lot more helpful and a lot more responsive than you may think. And what's the worst that can happen? Take risk, especially you have age and beauty on your side. So get after it, and kind of to the kind of themes we've been developing. You got to hustle. So define what you want, ask for it. And it's a zero cost position.
And I'd add to that, it's not necessarily, they've definitely taught me the law, helped to teach me the law. But I think what they've done for me, rather, is just put you in position to take advantage of opportunity. And so I think that's golden. It's just, it's almost like teaching you how to fish too, but it's definitely just putting you in the position to take advantage. Like my mentor told me, I guess the best thing he taught me was, he was like, imagine it's football, you're in you're within 5 yards of the touchdown. He's like, look, I'll block for you, but you got to score the touchdown. You know what I mean? So it's just like, I can put you in position and I can have you at the table, but if you don't, execute, then, it's a waste of opportunity. So I think that's the best thing. It's just like, look, I can put you in the position, but if you don't take advantage of it, then it's your loss.
Yeah, really quick. I think the line that kind of stands out to me was my mentor basically told me to go and carry the bags of a founder, and I was kind of like, whoa, them coming out of a private plane and I'm carrying their bags. I'm not going to do that job. But the point was basically to work alongside a founder to basically maximize learning. And so if I wanted to be a founder, in the future, or a venture capitalist in the future, to understand the challenges that a founder faces on a day-to-day basis, what better way to do that than being effectively their sidekick? And so I went and did that, and I think I'm forever better for it.
That's a good point.
We've got in the back, and then we've got front row over here next.
Thank you so much for speaking with us tonight. I really appreciate it. My question is about failure. And I think Simon Sinek says is that we grow most from our failures. So from each one of you, is there a point or a specific failure that you feel like you've had that you've grown the most from?
It's a hard one.
It's easy for me. So many failures, daily basis, weekly basis. I would say, I'd set up my entire life to try to be a physicist, and I literally failed a physics class, and that helped reroute me entirely. You know what I mean? It was super clear I was not going to get a PhD. I was not going to be a professor at MIT, and that I needed to do something else. And so I kind of just have been reacting to that, I think, ever since.
Yeah, so I'll zoom in a little bit, specifically about when I tried to first get into my current industry while I was in law school. I discovered investment banking, a couple classes, took with people who were in the industry and tried to get into it immediately, secured an opportunity, got into an interview, and fell flat on my face. Wasn't prepared, and they did not take it easy on me. And I walked away from that experience with this in my mind, to the point earlier. You'll have opportunities, you'll have strokes of luck in your life, but you need to be prepared when you hit the opportunity, and it's kind of a leap of faith, because you got to prepare not knowing when the opportunity will actually come to fruition, but you got to have faith that it'll be there, and that you're putting in your work now and it'll pay off at the end.
I think just perseverance. I don't really necessarily believe in failure, because things happen for a reason, and so I really just think it just makes you stronger and tougher, and it just makes you just try harder. I failed the bar a couple times, and I didn't get into Howard the first time, and 2016 was a huge failure, but I just think it just makes you just work harder and dig deep and just really just build you stronger. So I don't really believe in failure. I just think you just got to work harder.
I love how brutally honest you guys are. It's awesome. All right, you had one in the back, and then we've got the front.
So I'm a recent finance graduate, and I've had trouble trying to break into the field, like either as becoming an analyst or doing equities trading or something. So I have a little bit more traditional background, but since I finished school, I can't join a club or anything to try to get some of the skills to be an analyst. What are some pieces of advice that any of you guys might have for someone like myself?
Yeah, I would say leverage your alumni network is one place to start. Kind of speaking to people who are affiliated with organizations you're affiliated with, and picking their brains, especially if they're in the seat that you kind of want to be in, and kind of plucking them and making them your mentor, kind of to the point earlier. Secondarily, I think it goes to kind of making sure, when, kind of to my point earlier, when you have the opportunity, you do get that kind of stroke of luck, you're best prepared. So it kind of goes to putting in the hard work now, kind of on blind faith, learning about, to the extent you're trying to be an equities trader, learning about the equity markets, kind of learning how, the best equity traders kind of think about issues and problems, and putting that hard work up front.
I'll agree with that. And I'll just say, one, definitely analyze yourself. Make sure that you're coming at top notch. But two, just continue to do what you're doing now, but just continue to go harder. And don't be afraid to cold call people or ask people for coffee. And if you're hungry, and it shows, and people respect that. And so if you just continue to network, continue what you're doing hard, and just continue to pound the pavement, something will fall eventually. It's just it's the universe. It's only a matter of time. But you just got to continue to just work hard and don't be defeated.
My quick, augment on that would be, I think everyone is getting pinged for coffees, and coffee is delicious, and no one drinks more coffee here than I do. And I would love to have coffee with anyone here. You got to work on a side project, and I think you got to push value before you take value. Just because I think the number of notes that I receive that are people trying to do the coffee and the pull request before the push request. So literally, even if it's just hey, I looked through your website, looks like you invest in these kind of things. Have you looked at these 3 companies? Or hey, here's the most recent equity report I wrote on this really interesting company, Snap. Just wanted to share it and let me know any feedback. Any little gift you could give to someone else, I think, takes the conversion ratio way, 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 way up.
It's so true. I get so many emails every day from people who want jobs or want connections or whatever, and when you just have 1 or 2 sentences in it about why you're interested,
How can I help you do an event on campus, Liz?
Yeah. I went to your diversity and finance event, and I wanted to give you some feedback, or I love that.
That's actually really good. I'm actually going to take that too.
Yeah, I'm taking it as well. That's a really
awesome. All right, you're up, and then we're going over here.
Kellen and Chris, you must have interviewed lots of candidates, and you interview the team. So I just wanted to know, within that 15-20 minutes, what strikes you that this is the candidate you will select? So because we are on that verge where we are giving interviews, and we don't know what is happening wrong sometimes if you fail in the interview. So that is a question.
Yeah, I'll give you my quick react. That's a great question. I aim to get a sense that the individual is going to get what they want, or do what they want, or build what they want with or without my help. And it's a subtle, kind of complicated thing, but I don't want to feel like my decision or my role is basically, going to enable whatever they're going to do. I want to feel like if I don't get on their train right now, I'm going to miss the opportunity. So the way I think of it is I like people that seem like they're going to be a juggernaut. You know what I mean? Where if it doesn't work out, they're going to go chat with the next person. They're going to they're going to say, you know what, cool. I'm glad you gave me that feedback. I'm out of here. I'm going to go down the street to another VC. Peace. I look for that kind of energy and ambition, because I think that creates a sense of urgency and confidence and ambition that I think everyone can have.
Kind of to the confidence point, I would say that the person knows why they're sitting in the seat. and what they're actually there to do. And it's kind of to the same point. It's subtle, but it kind of speaks to, if this person knows what he or she is signing up for, it's going to be less of a surprise on the end. They'll stay longer with the organization. It'll be a great fit. They'll be a value additive member of the team, et cetera, et cetera. So, like, kind of in the first couple of instances, like, throw off those vibes where you're like, I'm here, I'm confident, I know why I'm sitting here, and here's what I want out of the situation.
I would just say, literally from your appearance to your resume, you have to come in polished. Everything. I even look at your shoes, like, are your shoes shine? Because it just shows like that attention to detail. And like once you are able to like enter the door, like really like your resume is tight. Because you got to come correct. You got to, especially as like minorities, and I mean minority in like a broader sense. Like even like if you're poor, you're something like that. It's a broader sense, but you really have to be on point. And then it's just a matter of like, can you relate to the person? Can you connect with the person? Like, are you engaging? Am I looking at my clock? That it's an hour interview and 45, into it, I'm like, oh shit, but like try to, go past that hour. So it really, once you're on point, then it's really a matter of, do I like the person and can I work with the person?
I love that. Oh my God, you coming correct, being on point, like, oh my God.
The interview advice that I always give that all of our employers have said is like probably succinctly says what most millennial interview candidates do poorly. I like to call it's an acronym I like to call REAF, R-E-A-F, and that stands for research, show enthusiasm, ask questions, and then follow up with a thank you. And so research, show that you have done so much research, you know everything there is to possibly know about the person you're talking about to and the company that you're interviewing at. And then obviously, show that enthusiasm and how excited you are. Don't play it cool. This is not the time to play hard to get. Ask questions, obviously, at the end, and ask good ones, like the ones you guys are asking today, and then follow up with a thank you note. And I'm telling you, every one of our employers, our partners tell us that, like, why aren't these college students sending thank you notes? Even if they might not give you their business card, ask for their email so you can say thank you, or ask the recruiter, etc. So,
honestly, so to that point, I met with a candidate like some time ago, and the thing that kind of stood out in the way he differentiated himself tremendously, he sent me a handwritten thank you card. No one does. That's the first and last time I've ever received a handwritten thank you card, and it's
got so much play.
It has so much play because,
Did you hire him?
He's still going through the process.
It's hard though, because on one hand you want your thank you note to get, maybe hand deliver the thank you note, but you want the thank you note to come before they submit their review of it.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But I just thought it was kind of, especially in the age of technology, it stood out, and it's gonna probably be seared in my brain.
Yeah.
Total retweet to the thank you note thing. I recently sent an amazing thank you email, and the person that interviewed me came to me and said, your thank you email was amazing, and I was like the only one that did it, so total retweet there. So I read some research recently, and the question they were asking was, is there a vested interest for companies to have a more diverse employee body? And they analyzed a bunch of companies, and they found that the most diverse companies are more innovative, and the most innovative companies are more diverse, and essentially they make more money from their innovational ideas and products. So in your opinions, what do you think research like that is what it will take for big name companies, particularly in your industries, to realize the benefits of diversifying their hires? And if not, what do you think it will take?
It's going to take more than that, unfortunately. But I'm super glad that this research is kind of coming to light, because I do think for folks that are either, kind of like one-track mind, like very, financially oriented, like that's a really compelling proposition. I think it's going to take. So I think a lot about community building, and I think a lot about. Liz and the WayUp team, I think getting rooms like this together have huge impact. You know what I mean? It's like 80 people at a time is how you can totally change an industry and change a company and create opportunities for folks. And so, I think a lot of it is community building and hosting events like this. So I've been thinking a lot about how do we kind of partner with organizations that are bringing folks together that may not otherwise have the exposure and the awareness and the education about a particular industry. So I think we're going to need a lot more of that. I think number two is, I think more firms need to basically figure out how to incorporate this into their day-to-day, their week-to-week, the way that they think about way more than just hiring. I mean, when they think about, when they're hosting events, when they're collaborating with other folks. And so I think it's going to take more time to kind of permeate through, and I think it's going to be really reliant on folks that are interested in kind of building these communities and championing these communities, and making it really, making it so it's employers have, no option, but to change and evolve, because we have to.
Can I actually follow up with a question to you guys, and then we've got 2 more in the audience, and then we're going to wrap up. Over the past 6 to 12 months, maybe since the election, women have become such a voice in, we're not getting the same wages, we're not getting promotions, we're not managing directors, whatever it might be. And I've seen, at least in tech, VCs have made such a conscious effort to help them. You guys aren't women, but you are all, an underrepresented minority when it comes to race. And I'm not hearing those same conversations nearly as much about race as I am about gender at all. And I'm just curious why you think that is. Is it that women are just being more vocal than people of race? And I'm saying, there are obviously people of race who are women, but I'm just curious why you think that the women topic is showing up in newspapers every day and it's a little less about race. Or am I wrong?
No, that's actually something that we need to understand and realize. And I just think that, I don't know, as a black man, I've always kind of fallen under like inferiority complexes. Like, when I went to Vanderbilt, I got in because I was black. And then when I went to Howard for law school, I wasn't good enough because I went to a predominantly black law school. So you're always finding yourself, being looked at as less than because you're a minority. And so I just think that you have to be, twice, you have to work twice as hard just to get it as much. And I think that in terms of that conversation, I don't know. I feel like there's always this undercurrent, even especially in asset management, like a lot of, especially being young too. Like I'm young, I'm black, and like the table will be like all white males or like just, all white. I'm like, it's very intimidating. But at the same time, I think there's just always this undercurrent of like affirmative action and less than. And I just sometimes feel like it's taboo to even go down that conversation when we talk about race, because it brings up a lot of these issues like affirmative action. And you can go back to slavery if you really wanted to. But it's just, I think that our country or our country on a national stage is not ready to really talk about the race relations. And so when we get into race, it's kind of not on the table. Even right now, there still is not a national conversation about race relations in America, which clearly it needs to happen.
Which is so interesting because we had a first black president before our first female one. So any other comments, and then we're going to go to the last 2, or... Okay, we'll go to the last 2. It's okay. It's a tough question. So why don't we go you, and then I know there's one in the back or over there, and then we are unfortunately up for questions here, but they have 15 minutes at the end to hang out over there, so if you do want to talk to them, you might have 10 or 15 minutes.
Firstly, I'd like to say thank you for you all being here. It's really inspiring to see black men up here. It's very rare. Thank
you for having us.
I was working on Wall Street over the summer, and you're right. Really is all white men, that's just the way it is, I guess, for right now. But
for now.
What I'd like to, for now, hopefully. I just wanted to ask Peter. So, firstly, you started your own VC company, which is unprecedented to me, because a lot of when you hear about VC, it's really big names, and they have a lot of capital behind them. So I wanted just to know, how did you get your capital?
Yeah,
where did you start?
Totally. First off, thank you. This gets back to, I think, one thing that I would try to have us all think about, which is you can operate within the existing framework that others have established for you, or you can do the riskier, more complicated, scary, totally daunting task, which is kind of go around it and create opportunities for yourself. So I thought a lot about that. If you think, if you think Wall Street is funky, you should take a peek at venture, because it's very funky. But I think that was part of it. You know what I mean? I was just there weren't going to be traditional opportunities for me. You know what I mean? If I waited to kind of, have my career open up via traditional channels, it was just not going to happen. And so I'd rather be proactive. I'd rather take things into my own hands. And again, my rule on a lot of these things is I think we should all just work twice as hard. You know what I mean? Like, or 3 times as hard. And I was just like, I'm just going to create the opportunity for myself, and I'm going to prove to the venture capital community that I know how to identify amazing teams, I know how to support them, I know how to get them together, and I know how this industry works. And I'm not going to wait for anyone to teach me that or to show me that or create the opportunity. So it was really feeling like, if I wanted to actually really, kind of like win in this industry, and especially to try to do so earlier in my career than later, I had to kind of, carve my own path. And so there was no other option for me. You know what I mean? Like, that was also it. You know what I mean? Like, in my mind, like the boats and stuff had burned. You know what I mean? And so if I was gonna like get off of this island, you know what I mean? Like, I need to like kind of craft my own raft.
What was the initial capital you had?
Yeah. So
The question was, but where did the money come from?
Yeah, of course. No. So, in early days, I've always like run like, companies and like worked on side projects and stuff. So I've always been hoarding as much cash as I can. I grew up with no cash, and so I value cash a lot. So I think that's number one. And I basically just started a bunch of businesses when I was in school and saved. So that was number one. And then number two is I cultivated trusted relationships with folks that had tremendous pools of capital, but didn't have necessarily the access and the ability to identify what was going on in the world of startups. And so if I could be that bridge, you know what I mean? Like, the world of venture is about connecting capital with amazing entrepreneurs. So I just spent my senior year just doing that.
That's amazing. All right, our last question, and I might ask only 1 or 2 of you guys to answer for time.
We are going to close with Facebook Live now, too. And I think this is more for Kellen and Chris, but we have an undergrad law student here with bare minimum financial knowledge. There's a whole sea of resources available, but which ones would you point to a person like me for improving my commercial knowledge?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so there are a number of free resources and a number of resources that of nominal amount of money you can easily acquire it. And their Investopedia, Macabus.com, Learn Finance. There are books that are really resourceful, specifically on investment banking. There's an author. It's called Investment Banking by Rosenbaum and Pearl. It's a great resource to kind of give you a peek on valuation and how bankers think about value. There's an amazing professor at NYU named Aswath Damodaran. He puts his corporate finance classes online for free, and you can just look at them and learn corporate finance kind of from your desktop. And kind of in the same vein, there's YouTube. There are videos. There are people who put out content that can kind of like bridge the gap from the technical side.
Yeah, honestly, I think the problem in this day and age is that we have way too much access to information. So, I mean, Google. Like, if you really want to know about something, Google it. And I'm not trying to be a smart ass. I'm just saying, literally, like, there's so much information out there, and there's so many people that we literally can learn anything on the internet. And so all of the sites that you just mentioned, those are great too, but just Google it and go after there. And like, I literally was in I'm not going to talk too long. I literally was in a corporate finance class, and I'm sorry, I didn't really know what a stock or a bond was. I mean, I knew what a stock was, but bonds. And my classmate, who's a jerk, she was like, "Kellen, it's debt." And I was just like, "Okay, I got it." So you can do it. Trust me.
Awesome. So with that, we are going to wrap things up. But I guess my final words on this is, at WayUp, we feel very strongly that no matter your race, your gender, your sexual orientation, where you come from, who you know, where you went to school, you should have the opportunity to do whatever you want. And hopefully you guys have been inspired by these amazing panelists tonight to see that you really can do anything if you just put your mind to it. So please join me in thanking these amazing panelists.
The opportunity.
And two or maybe 3 of them, but one of them might have to run, will be over there by the Sweet Green salads. Speaking of which, thank you to Sweet Green for, contributing all the salads, the amazing food. All right, we'll do a round of applause for Sweet Green. as always, my favorite salad in New York. So, yeah, it is. So thank you guys again for coming out. And if you have any questions, a couple of them are going to be over there. But have a good night.